Let's see. Oh, I think
we're live, aren't we?
Yeah.
Hello everybody, it's Thursday again, and this is the infant feeding team, Thursday afternoon once a week, and I think this is about, I don't know, about our 18th or 19th session now, so
we ought to count one day.
We ought to, hadn't we? So we've got an hour of questions and answers for you, and anything else that you want to talk about, as long as it's got something to do with infant feeding, so that's breastfeeding or bottle feeding, it doesn't matter. We will be happy to support you either way with any questions that you have. If you have any questions about inductions or about pregnancy or about your appointments or scans, please divert them to an Ask the Midwife session that they have every week as well. Only because we aren't working in those fields, so we may not give you the most up-to-date information as things are changing all the time. So just about infant feeding today. I'm Naomi, one of the infant feeding midwives.
And I'm Alex, I'm another infant feeding midwife. We're 2 of 5. There are 5 infant feeding midwives, and we cover 7 days a week in the hospital. And it's quite nice actually, because we go about nowadays and we meet people and they go, oh, I've seen you. So it's quite fun to meet the people who are listening. So we love your feedback. We like to know what's going on. I saw a mum this morning and I said to her, we'd love to know, what you think we can do. We all start these sessions and think, what will we talk about today? What topics shall we bring up? And we often do cover, through the questions, a lot of the same things, but we also like to bring in new things to talk about as well. So.
And quite often it's things that have come up during the week that we've been looking after and seeing mums in the hospital, and they've brought something to our attention and or from the staff, and we think, oh, that's a good one that we can discuss with everybody and open up a conversation with all of you about any issues that you might have on that particular subject. So if you have got a particular subject you would like us to talk about, then do put that question down. It's not about your own personal things, but you have heard something or you want to know a little bit more. We thought we'd start today with talking about twins, because we don't think we've discussed twins very much on here, only if we've had questions, but not very many, and it's just talking about how it's best to feed your twins. And you've got 2 breasts, and sometimes mums have 3 babies, sometimes they have 4. And they manage to produce enough breast milk. So that I think the crucial thing is that everything that we say about 1 baby is exactly the same for 2. So you need to be doing lots and lots of skin to skin when your babies are born, and increase your prolactin receptor stimulation and your hormone stimulation. So that skin to skin will do that, and the babies are more likely to crawl and attach to the breast if they've been close to their mother. And so if you've had a normal birth, then it's a little bit easier to have them skin to skin straight away for longer. But if you're having a cesarean to birth your twins, then you really have to be very, very proactive to get 2 babies close to you when you're very numb, or if you're feeling very shaky, cold, sick, and just a little bit overwhelmed by what's happened, and bearing in mind that while you're doing that skin to skin, somebody is rummaging around in your tummy at the same time. It can be a little bit unnerving, but we can't underestimate the power of doing that skin to skin and the sort of switch that it produces to make milk. And we know that mums that haven't had much skin to skin at birth because they've had cesareans, for instance, or the baby's have been separated from the mum, we know that they produce less milk, and the babies tend to lose a little bit more weight because the milk takes a little bit longer to come in. So these are the babies that we see that are coming back in, or that we're having to see more frequently, or the community midwives are having to see more frequently, because the baby's weight is a little bit slow, and it's you're learning to grapple with 2 babies, and that's quite hard. So you don't need 2 breasts to feed 1 baby. But you need 1 breast to feed 2. So but it's what you ask your breasts to do. You will then start to produce that milk, and the volume will be about the same in the early days. But the need of the production of milk is not going to be hugely more, because usually mothers produce more than they need. So actually, you normally have got enough for 2. But you do need to get that stimulation. You do need to do lots of early hand expression if your babies aren't attaching, if they're a little bit small, if they're a little bit early. You need to be really on it with that hand expression, and also to get your babies to feed as quickly as you can after you've had them, if you're feeling up to it, and that's really important to make that a priority. And then that will start the production of milk, and then hopefully you will produce milk in the normal way, and by about 2 weeks you should be producing between 750 and about a litre of milk in 24 hours. So not everyone will do that, but that's, if your babies were in the neonatal unit, for instance, they would expect you to be producing about a litre a day by day 10. We're a little bit more flexible about that, but actually, you will be producing quite a lot of milk, and actually that sounds like an awful lot of milk, a litre, doesn't it? But just think about how much your baby at 2 weeks will have. If you were to give a bottle to your baby, it would probably be between 60 and 100 mils.
Yeah.
So, over 8 to 10 feeds, that's between 750 and a litre. So if you break it down like that, then that's what we would expect you to do. And that would be enough for 2 babies as well in the early days, but the needs will change and your babies will change. And the other thing is, you don't have to feed your baby on the same breast, so each baby doesn't have to have one breast, and actually it works better sometimes if you swap them over, because you often have one really good feeder and one not so good feeder. And so the one that's a little bit slower, a bit more sleepy, will often benefit from the one that's guzzling, because it will stimulate the breasts equally, and give the one that's not such a good feeder more of an advantage to feed. So there aren't any rules in it at all, and you don't have to feed them at the same time, although I think that's what most mums aspire to, isn't it, when they have twins? That's what they want to do, and they're desperate to get us involved to show them how to tandem feed. Tandem feeding is at the same time. And so you need to, just work on what your baby's needs are, rather than what you're wanting to do in the early days, so that the milk is driven by the babies rather than a set pattern. It's really important that they can feed as they need. So one baby may want to feed too early, and one might want to feed 3 early, or 1.5 early and 2.5 early. And particularly in the early days, they may be different sizes and weights of the babies, they may be different sexes, and so they are quite often very different in their personalities. They're, after all, different people. So don't be too stressed by trying to get your babies to feed together at the same time by the clock, because they will tell you what they want to do. You got anything else to add about?
No, I mean, it is tough having twins, and I think and I do understand that mums want their babies to feed at the same time, because it makes life a lot easier for them. They do actually get gaps, otherwise the day, mums with one baby will often say they feel like they do nothing other than feed, and that's often the case, obviously very much so when they're two. In my days working in the Abingdon Baby Cafe, we had a mum who had twins, and I remember other mothers looking at her saying, "My word, and how on earth do you manage?" And she said, "I know nothing else," because she hadn't had a singleton, so she'd only ever had twins, and she did amazingly. She fed those babies exclusively up until they were, quite old babies, so they were, well beyond a year and into the second year. So she did really, really well, absolutely brilliantly. So mothers do it. It takes a lot of effort in the beginning and a lot of support from those around them.
I think, and also putting the right headset in, because if you think, "Oh, I can't do it," then you won't. No. But if you say, "Actually, I'm going to exclusively feed my babies, that's my plan," then you will just put your head down and get through it. And get lots of help, get family involved if you can. And go to
widen your
support
bubble.
groups. Lots of twin support, because there are quite a lot of groups around that are for twin mums and both parents as well. So it's really important that you can make contact with other people that have got them, just to keep you going on it, because it can seem very endless in the early days, and very exhausting. And you do, I think, have to be a little bit more organised with two, just because you would, as Alex said, it is very hard, and you have a round of constant. But you will find your way, and I think that you will produce enough milk. Your breasts are there, and many women breastfeed babies with just one breast, and have no problems with production. So one breast per baby is absolutely fine. You don't actually have to have 2 breasts to feed your babies, and if you've done that order in the early days, where you've put your order in, and the milk production has been asked to be produced, then you will have enough.
Yeah, you'll produce enough.
You
It's
will
all to do
have
with that
enough.
supply and demand.
Yeah. So,
Should we do some questions?
yeah, we've got lots of
Yeah, we've got a few
questions.
coming in. Yeah.
That's nice.
So Imi Sharp's come on saying, "Hello Alex and Naomi, I came to see Alex the other day with Leo. We're starting to struggle with the latch, so it sounds like we perhaps need to see you again. Perhaps we need to have a look. We could do it on Attend Anywhere, Imi, so we could do it on that video, on the video platform, and might be able to see what's happening. One of the things I think we've talked about before on this is that as babies grow, we sometimes don't allow for that, and mummies are still bringing their babies in the same way as they did when they were tiny and newborn. So although it may only have been last week, actually maybe we need to allow for the fact that he's probably growing a little bit, because they do grow quite rapidly. It may only be that. It's just remembering that nose opposite nipple starting point, and then allowing that head to tip back. So.
And you do sometimes go back to default, don't you? You know, in the middle of the night, you creep back to what you were doing because you're tired, and then that becomes the norm again. Yeah,
they don't really know where. So from the point of view, maybe just get in touch and we can have a look on Attend Anywhere if need be, and if you need to, you could come in. So Jazz Burns come up saying, "Hi ladies, my 3-month-old is exclusively breastfed and consistently waits to feed every 2 hours during the night. And I was just wondering when I might hope to get some longer stretches." Oh, you poor love. "He feeds on demand during the day and can feed anywhere between 1 and 3 hours. Cheeky monkey."
Sounds quite normal at 12 weeks.
Yeah, he sounds like he knows what he likes. And
I think also you've got to talk about breast capacity, and it might be that your breasts haven't got capacity to have lots and lots and lots of milk in them. So over a period of 24 hours, somebody with larger, and I've talked about this before, somebody with larger breast capacity might feed less frequently, and other mums that have got less breast capacity, and it's not based on the size of your breasts, will feed more frequently, but the babies will get the same amount of food in 24 hours. So it's just the way that you are sometimes, and no matter what you do, you're not going to change that. So your baby may well need to feed that often to get the same amount as maybe your friend whose baby's starting to sleep a bit longer. You know, don't compare. Don't look at what her baby's doing and what your baby's doing, because your baby's unique to you and to itself. So you know, when they're 15, they won't be waking up every 2 hours.
Well, you'd be lucky if they're awake at all.
So, you know, I know that sounds like a long time away, but it isn't really. They're not doing it forever. And 12 weeks is a very busy time for most babies. They do have a very big growth spurt at about 12 weeks. And that goes back to the very, very early days when you started your milk production order, where you put the order in at birth. And this is the calibration for when your baby is 12 weeks old. So, you know, if you had a really good calibration period, you will have enough to get through that time, and your baby will deal with it. They will come through it, and then they may well start to settle. But, you know, babies you can't really get any order to babies before about 4 months anyway. Don't put any expectation there. They will gradually sleep for longer, and then just once they might sleep for 6 hours, and you'll think you're made in heaven. And then they'll go back to their old ways again. But don't be too pressurised to have the next stage. Enjoy the stage that you've got and make the most of it. And just have a cat nap in the day if you can. You know, that's the thing. If you've got a friend or your partner's around, take it in turns to have a cat nap when they're about, so that you can get a bit more sleep. It's the trying time.
And it's developmental as well. You know, babies actually aren't geared to go long periods of time without food. So, you know, they digest breast milk quite rapidly. So, and it's actually, we think it's a bit of a feedback loop, and it is protective with regard to sudden infant death, that babies do wake frequently, and they're not going into very, very deep sleep. So it is really quite normal. But let's keep our fingers crossed. He might give you a 3 or a 4 hour once in a while, and you might feel a bit better for it.
Yeah,
so
it's tough.
Good luck with it, Jazz.
We feel your pain.
Yeah, and you're not on your own. It happens to so many.
I'm sure if we said to everybody, let us know if your baby goes too early at night, everyone will say yes. That's listening today, that's got 3-month-old babies.
Rachel's come through with saying, she's saying these videos are very helpful. She gave birth a week ago today. Just wondering if you have any advice on how to prevent breast engorgement. Milk removal is the best thing you can do, is just keep that milk moving, don't let it stay there. when you think about, we hear about mastitis, it's to do with, well, actually that's slightly missed over. I was thinking about mastitis is milk that's just stayed in the breast, and that's just milk, it's stasis, it's milk that's stayed in the breast, not being removed. So the best thing you can do is remove it. So if you're feeling full and the baby's not doing it, you're not removing enough milk to make you feel comfortable, then get your hands on your breast and massage, and get some hand expressing going as well. Get that milk moving. I think Naomi's going to find the page for hand expressing.
But I think we're about to sneeze.
So, so it's really important to think about milk removal.
In order to remove the milk, get that really deep latch, so if you're looking at these babies, the way they're opening their mouth, and really getting a big mouthful of breast. So you want to make sure that you've got an asymmetrical latch, that your baby is going from underneath, not in the middle, because that is the most common reason for oversupply, is that your baby is just on the middle of the breast, like a bottle, and not on the asymmetrical latch, which is just literally there. This is the top gum. It's just skimming the nipple, and the nipple goes right to the back, and your baby's chin is right underneath the breast, so that it's removing the milk from deep within the breast, and it's millimeters. So just look, get somebody to video you when you're breastfeeding, and just have a look and see how asymmetrical your baby's latch is, and how far into the breast is your baby. So you'd expect to see your baby's chin really tucked in, and it'll have a double chin. It'll be really double chin. It'll be like this against the breast, and you won't be able to see the lips.
No, you're too close.
The baby will be so close in. So if you can see your baby's lips, and you look like there's areola all the way around your baby's mouth, I would say that you're probably not quite deep enough, and you need to try and improve the latch. Sometimes if you lay back once you've got your baby on, if you're struggling to attach any other way but cross cradle or underarm, then lie back, so that when you are, I'm going to spoil your pattern, aren't I? You've got these lovely babies. But when your baby's on the breast, then lie back a little bit, and that just might enable them to go a little bit deeper. And the other thing you could try is to just run your finger across the chin while your baby's on the breast. So you sort of slide your finger between your breast and your baby's chin, and you pull it down, and that sometimes just widens the gape when your baby's on the breast, so you're not having to take them off and put them on, and take them off and put them on. You're just tweaking their chin, and that sometimes just allows you to get a slightly deeper latch, and that might then resolve the fullness that you're having. There's another picture there, which you can see how close that baby's mouth is to the breast once it's on, and you can see how that nipple is just skimming the gum, and the chin is already touching the breast before it's even got the nipple anywhere near its inside of its mouth. So it's really important that you pay attention to those things more than anything else, because it's a bit like putting your hand on the door handle, and I know I said this before, but if you put it next to the handle, it doesn't open the door. If you put it on the handle, it does. Your baby has to go on the handle. It has to open the door, and it doesn't work as well if you don't.
Yeah.
It's just the same. So look at all of those things, and just get someone to video you doing it, so that you can have a really good look at the shape of your breasts and the way that your baby's coming up. And also we have talked about this endlessly as well, is the angle of the dangle. So if your breasts are up here, your baby is facing you, and if your breasts are down here, your baby comes up from underneath. And you have to look at that video and see where your breasts are lying and how your baby is, because it could be slipping off as well and not able to get a really deep latch because the breast is not actually in the right plane. It's not lying, and he's not lying in the right place to get the breast stable in his mouth. So have a little look at all of that and see if that makes any sense to you. And maybe think about Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, La Leche, baby cafes. They've all got facilities to support you in normal breastfeeding.
So I think, Rachel, thinking about breast engorgement, it's making sure that P&A, positioning attachment, is really as spot on as you can get it. Baby's ability to remove milk is really impacted on how it's going on, so that asymmetrical latch. We always talk about, as Naomi said, chin in, and I always go nose free, and you want to see a crescent of areola above the upper lip. That's what you want to be seeing, not a full circle, as Naomi mentioned. So chin in, nose free, crescent of areola, and that they're removing the milk, that at the end of the feed you go, yeah, that breast feels more comfortable, I can feel the baby's removed the milk. If the baby's not doing it effectively, use your hand, use a pump, keep the milk moving. Don't get to the point where you're thinking, whoa, these are really rock hard, and you can really tell that your breast tissue's right up here and right under here, and if that's happening, then you really need to get that milk moving. Warmth will help if you've got to that stage. Getting the milk, will flow more easily. Just go and stand in a warm shower, so things like that. But so good luck with that. If it is persisting and you're only 1 week old, your baby, then do get the midwives to give you a hand. You're still under the midwives.
Your breasts make enough for 6 babies in the first week. They don't know how many you've had because you're a mammal. And then when your baby starts to remove the milk, they realise that you've only got 1 or 2. They will make it for those babies that are asking. So if you only feed your baby half the time, you'll only make enough for half a baby, which is where, once you start supplementing your baby and giving bottles to because you think your baby's not settled or you haven't got enough, then that will put the supply order in to only make enough for half a baby. So, but at this point, you're making enough for 6 babies, and that will settle down. So it's good that you've got plenty of milk, but make sure that you're really getting that attachment right in the early days, because that's putting the order in for later as well.
Right, so stacking up. Claire Bunyan's been on before, and she's actually, it's very relevant. It's very relevant to what we've just been talking about. She's gone, hello again both. This week I have a question about oversupply. So I've always had a problem with oversupply, engorgement and forceful letdown. Is there any chance that this will get better? My baby boy is nearly 12 weeks old now. 12 weeks, gosh, that's gone quickly. And he's over 6 kilos.
You're doing so well.
I was hoping for some improvement by now. Will it be like this forever? It gets really down as it's quite painful, and I leak so much between feeds. It might be interesting for others to hear about oversupply. There's a lot of information about undersupply, I agree, but fewer resources for women suffering with the opposite problem. Thanks for all your help.
Might be worth ringing us.
Yeah, give us a chat.
Have a little conversation
We
with
talk
us.
about block feeding with mums who may have already tried that, but that's something we could think about having a chat with you about. Again, we do need to look at positioning attachment again, because if the baby isn't going on as brilliantly as they can, then actually they drive an oversupply and they're not removing the milk as effectively. A baby that's going on the breast that's getting that waterier first part of the milk will sit there and demand more and more and more milk and never gets to that lovely fattier part of the milk, where it's like the chocolate pudding, it's the heavy bit, the main course. And they don't get to that, so they just keep going on and going. It's like having a soup diet or a lettuce diet, because they keep looking for more food. So it's possible, Claire, that we need to just look at your P&A again, your positioning attachment again, and just see what's happening. And if that is spot on, then we could perhaps talk about, block feeding or something like that. Let's have a chat. Give us a call.
It's quite a big thing to do block feeding. It's very effective, but if you do it too soon, it can affect your supply, and that can be even worse then. It can drop your supply dramatically. And so, it's probably around about the time that you would start to think about doing that at 12 weeks if you've still got too much milk.
And there are other options as well, which we can talk to you about.
So
Saloni McCormack has come. Hi both, my baby's now 11 days old. He didn't latch on for the first 12 hours in hospital. He was given donated milk. He then did latch but had jaundice, so wasn't able to take well from the breast, as he's very sleepy, and he lost 11% of his birth weight. We then had to put him on formula to help him get some milk. Over the last few days, while he got less sleepy, I always offered the breast first, topped up with formula. Baby's now above birth weight, and we're trying to wean him off the formula. Well done you. Over the last few days, he's only had around 50 to 70 mils a day, but I'm conscious that my milk supply hasn't caught up as yet, so can't exclusively breastfeed him. Well, it sounds like you're getting there, if that's all you're giving him.
Day 11.
Yeah, how do I try and increase my milk supply so I can exclusively breastfeed him? Feed and feed. And pump. No, it's just
pump 8 times a day.
If you pump after the feeds, if you can, what you're doing is saying to the body, we want more than you've given us already. Give
16 feeds a day.
Yeah, give me more milk, and then you can, the milk that you've pumped, you can give instead of the formula, and then you've got the milk, and then hopefully he'll start taking it all from the breast. So
it is a slow process, and we did talk about this last week. So I don't know if you were listening last week. You were probably quite busy if your baby's 11 days old.
Yeah.
You probably weren't. But if you go onto the YouTube channel, the Oxfordshire Maternity Voices Partnership YouTube channel, look at last week's, we did actually talk quite a lot about how to get babies off supplements and the cycle of bottles and how you lose confidence as a parent when you start giving bottles. So have a look at that, because it may answer, and I think it was right at the very beginning we did it, so you don't have to listen to it endlessly. You could perhaps just tune into the first 10-15 minutes where we were talking about it, and just how best to manage that. And if you're still not sure, then call someone and we can talk you through it again. But it's very early days, and catch up takes a little while, particularly when you've had a shaky start. So you've just got to stimulate, as Alex said.
But you're almost there. I mean, you really are almost there, Sloane. You've done a brilliant job. Absolutely fantastic. So much easier.
It's scary, isn't it, when it happens? But you've done well. Aya's
come on, she keeps hearing us saying you can't overfeed a breastfed baby. Well, I'm glad that message is out there. I do get your butt though. She goes, but I'm convinced that mine bucks the trend. He's 3 months old and will feed whenever he can, and when he does feed for longer than about 8 minutes or feed close together, he'll projectile vomit horrendously. He's also ahead of his growth curve, going up almost a whole percentile line. What a
sounds like a real guzzler. Sounds like you've got loads of milk and he's just troughing it all, isn't he? And then burping and bringing it all back because he's in such a hurry.
Yeah, and it's babies do feed for lots of reasons and not just food. So he'll love that closeness and comfort with you. You obviously, if you're finding that he's feeding for more than 8 minutes and then he's sick, you've obviously got the most amazing letdown. Because that's really, really quick to be getting the sort of volumes that he'll be bringing back up.
But you talk to your health visitors, they do have a specialist breastfeeding service, your health visitors, so maybe they could watch a breastfeed to make sure that everything's okay. It sounds like he's growing, so that's not the issue, but he's probably another super, getting lots and lots of soup because he's feeding frequently and not draining your breasts really well. And it might be that you have got oversupply. I think it's an oversupply week this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
You may well have oversupply as well, and the fact that he's on off all the time, feeding frequently and for short periods, and growing a lot because of the high levels of carbohydrate and the lactose in the milk that they get first. It's very high in sugar, good sugar, but it's very high in sugar, so they do gain a lot of weight and have very explosive nappies as a result of it. So if that sounds a bit like what you're struggling with, get somebody to watch you feed and just see if everything is okay, just to see if you can tweak the attachment. Even at 12 weeks, you can still do that, and it might just increase the depth. Look at the way he's attaching to the breast. Is he on the end a little bit too much? Can you improve the depth of his latch? I know he's got a bigger mouth now, and it's very easy for them just to help themselves almost at 12 weeks. But and they do start, to get quite nosy at about 12-13 weeks, and they start
doing their Olympics, don't they?
And pulling off and looking around as soon as they hear something. So
extreme breastfeeding starts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a period of a different period of time in breastfeeding, but just pay attention to the attachment. And I know we go back to this all the time, but actually
it does make a difference. It does make a difference.
It is absolutely the difference between a happy mum and baby and an unhappy mum and baby so frequently. And it's never too late to improve that attachment.
I think I've shared this a fair few times, but I was feeding my third when I started training as an NCT breastfeeding counsellor. And I'd fed my others, and at a year of age, having started my training, I realised that I could improve the attachment, and oh my word, what a difference it made. And he was a year and my third baby. So I wish I'd known a lot of this beforehand, because it made a huge difference. So just showing that actually it's never too late to improve the attachment.
Get somebody to have a look, see if there's a health visitor around that can support you in breastfeeding. There is a dedicated health visitor team of breastfeeding support. So, ask your health visitor about it and see if they can help you with that, or, OBS, La Leche.
Just picking up on something that Naomi mentioned about sugar, that our human milk is so full of sugar, and the reason for that is we have a lot of sugar in our milk because we grow the biggest brains. So.
Yeah, your baby's designed to grow slowly.
Yeah. We've got 10 comments at
Oh,
least,
how
so we
fabulous.
need to move on.
How
So I'll
fabulous.
stop talking. Katie's come through saying it's all been really interesting hearing, and she's expecting her second baby soon. Her first baby fed every 2 hours, and she didn't know about breast capacity, and that's really interesting. Thank you. Definitely going to be more chilled this time round. It
Yeah,
really
you
does
will
make
be.
a difference. It really, really does make a difference, because we know that most women will produce in the region of 750 mils regardless of breast size.
Yeah.
So it just means that some women who maybe have less capacity will just be feeding a bit more frequently, and that's just the way it is. But the baby will grow just the same.
Yeah, they'll have the same amount by the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly, just
the
in a
right
different
amount for them
way.
to grow, but it'll be different.
Yeah.
And
And good luck, Katie, with that.
don't
Number
compare.
2.
Don't compare to your friend whose baby only has 4 feeds a day, because that's not
I'd also
normal.
say
That's not normal.
Because you're expecting a second, don't compare to the first.
No.
Because I've just finished breastfeeding clinic this morning, and one of the mummies is a second baby, and actually it's really different to the first baby, and that often happens. So don't go in with an open mind, because this is a new person, and we talk about having a new dance partner in feeding. So it's like you already know the dance, but the baby that's coming doesn't. So they've got to learn, and you've got to do it together. So it's a new dance partner coming.
And make sure you don't feed your newborn baby like the way you ended up finishing feeding your older baby, because you will be very sore and your baby will not get what it needs, because the older baby will be slapped across your knee somewhere and crawling about, quite often. So your newborn baby, you can't do that. You've got to go right back to basics again and really make sure that you put all the principles in place that we talk about every week to get that attachment absolutely tip-top.
Yeah,
and then you don't get into trouble.
They can't do it themselves. In a laid back position they can attach, but if you're in a cross cradle, no hope. You have got to do it. Bring them in nice and close.
Yeah.
Freya has said, "Hi ladies, my 6-week-old latch seems to have suddenly got quite weak, and she keeps losing the nipple and getting frustrated. Is there any reason this might be happening?" I would say nothing's jumping to mind at the moment.
Have you got the angle of the dangle right? That it might be that that she's slipping off because she's got a bit bigger. Often feeding becomes more complex between 6 and 8 weeks. The baby's shape of its mouth changes. Is it noisy when it's feeding? Is there any clicking or anything when your baby's swallowing and suckling? But often if your breasts are dangling down and your baby's across your tummy, like a tummy to mummy position, then often as they let go and the baby mouth's got bigger, they will lose the attachment and the breast will fall out of your baby's mouth. So pay attention to that. Do you need to turn your baby around so they're looking more up at you, so that you're not doing tummy to mummy, you're doing angle of the dangle. So you're looking at the way that your breast is lying, and if it's going down like that, make sure that your baby's coming up from underneath and you're not trying to put your baby on sideways with his tummy on your tummy. And just see if just by improving that will help the latch a little bit. But use the local services as well if you're struggling, just to see if somebody can watch what you're doing.
This might be happening unwittingly if you're using pillows and things on your lap, because as a baby grows, actually your baby may be just too high at the breast. So thinking about that baby being able to get a really good mouthful, if the pillows are too high, then that
might
baby
be time
can't
to move them if you've been using them.
Yeah, so we do. I mean, pillows can be.
Or you could sit your baby on your lap and see if they will attach that way. If you're not doing that, and just see if that changes the positioning. Hold them around their tummy rather than their armpits, so that their arms aren't in front of their face. If you put your hands down, then your baby can use his hands to massage your breasts, and then he will bob, which is quite off-putting for some mums if they've not done it before, and then bring them up, bring that to underneath the breast, so they have to sort of lift their chin up to go on, so they're coming up on, and you're sort of taking them in close to you when they're going on, and sometimes that will just improve the latch a little bit. And the thing is that with a position like this, and if you haven't done it before, it's completely different to what you were doing, which means that you're not going to go back to default so easily if you do something really different, because if it's not working, you have to do something different. So think about all of those things first, and if you're sure that it's none of those things, then you probably need to have a conversation with somebody. Hopefully your baby's reaching its milestones, it's pooing and peeing appropriately, and it's gaining the right amount of weight.
Yeah.
If you've had your baby weighed, presumably you're seeing your health visitor GP in the next couple of weeks for your check.
Have a flick through your red book because it has milestones in there, and I'll tell you what babies should be doing at each age, which is always a good indicator.
Just for your records, you can write in that book as well.
Yeah. So hopefully that will help Freya. I hope so. Rachel's come back, so thank you for our comments. Susie has come on. How should you hold babies when they get bigger? Thanks. Wow.
Big boy feeding.
Big baby feeding. So some mums like to do it so that the baby's bottom drops in their lap, so that they end up being. Do you want to demonstrate it? So I've got the laptop. So that this isn't a big. We have a bigger doll when we're doing breastfeeding clinic, but literally the baby drops into the lap, and then it's just the shoulders.
Sitting on my knee. You can't see what I'm doing here, but he's sitting on my knee and sitting more upright.
Yeah.
Because they actually get a little bit fed up of being like that across you, so they can't really see what's happening, and they want to see a little bit more about what's going on around them, and they may feel a little bit claustrophobic if they're close. Some babies don't mind, but certainly when they get to 9, 10, 11 weeks, they should be sort of in it wanting to do a different type of position. So you can sit them up a little bit. You might find that you get a book on the floor or a tub on the floor, a washing up bowl, and you put your foot on it, or a footstool, and just put one of your feet. I'm doing this, but you can't see me. Put one of your feet on a footstool or something, and then or a pile of books or anything, and then sit your baby on your lap with the knee that's up, and that sometimes helps.
It's going to move the camera so you can see.
So you can see that my leg is up a little bit more, and so that your baby is sitting more in that position, and they often are more comfortable then. And if they're a little bit burpy and they're getting more volume of milk, you might find that they are much less sicky if they're feeding in a slightly upright position as well. So have a try and just be a little bit experimental. Don't be afraid to do something different. They don't like change very much, but once they've got it, they're quite happy once you do something different. So be a little bit more experimental and see if that helps you.
Okay, hopefully
that's helpful.
That'll help you, Susie. Organisations like, and I know we mention them every time, but La Leche are superb at helping with feeding and just day-to-day breastfeeding. They support mothers who are tandem feeding, i.e. an older baby and a younger baby, and they'll also support mums into with this sort of thing with positioning and attachment. It's a very good local it's an international organisation, but locally in Oxford it's very active, and they are doing online sessions. So there's opportunities to talk to like-minded people about feeding. So.
Absolutely.
Right, hope that helps, Susie. Anyway, moving on to Katie. She says her baby's now 6 weeks old on Saturday, feeds well but often tends to fall asleep after around 10 minutes into the feed, and then he'll sleep for 10 minutes and then wake wanting to finish the feed. I try and wind him to encourage him to be awake, but often this doesn't work. Any tips on how I can encourage him to keep awake? Nappy changes sometimes help.
Through.
A nappy change. So when he started getting a bit drowsy at the breast, if he lets go and comes off, a nappy change is often useful to try and encourage them to take the second side.
You could just take him off and pat him a bit, and then put him on the other side before. As soon as he starts to look like he's slowing down, just take him off and put him on the other side, and that just might change the way he feeds for just 48 hours. It might just up the length of time that he feeds for.
Compressions are good as well, because compressions can often get that baby that's being a bit more laid back and make them encourage them to do a bit more. So compressions, as Naomi's demonstrating, is
so when they suckle, you talk, I'll do.
So when you do compressions, you want your hands back against the chest wall, big handful of breath, as you can see Naomi's doing. When the baby's suckling, in and hold. When the baby stops, release. When the baby suckles, in and hold. When the baby stops, release. So
it's not pumping like this, which is different completely. It's holding and squeezing. And there's a few videos showing it. Jack Newman does some videos on breast compression, and also Global Media, don't they?
Yeah, Global Health Media.
Global Health Media, they do some really good ones as well. And
think about the breast, and I know we've talked about it before, as a clock face. So you work your way round. You want to work all those lobes like you do when you're hand expressing, but the difference with this is it's in and hold when the baby's feeding and release.
Go like that.
Yeah.
Go like that.
But what you don't want to be is right by the baby's mouth. You want to be far enough back that there's no risk of knocking the baby off. So that can really help when you get into that sleepy stage. Do some compressions. That often gets them alert, eyes open. They'll do a bit more.
Let down.
Yeah. You'll get that bit more milk into them, and then and a bit more active feeding.
You might not feel the letdown.
No.
Most people don't.
Most people
feel
don't.
the letdown.
Yeah.
But what you will see is your baby starting to glug again. So you know when your baby gets a little bit sleepy and it drifts off, and then suddenly it starts to glug again. That's your letdown, and you have multiple letdowns in a breastfeed. So that's how your baby gets its food. It's driven by the letdowns and the hormones that release the milk. And so by doing breast compressions, that will encourage letdowns, so your baby will get more to drink, and they will keep drinking with flow, because they tend to fall asleep when the flow drops down. And if you've had quite a quick flow in the first few minutes, they may be driven by that rather than by trickling milk. And so if the flow suddenly disappears, they may well switch off, and then it's just the way that you deliver the milk. It's not a problem. It's just the way you deliver milk. But by doing compressions, you might encourage another letdown for them to stay on a bit longer.
Aya's come back replying to Claire's comment from earlier about the block feeding. She said Aya's saying she had the same problem, and she found that block feeding did help her. She has helped her a lot. And once she reduced her supply, her baby started feeding, went from 24 feeds a day to 12. So
that's really wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that worked for you. Doesn't work for everybody, but I'm glad it worked for you. It's one thing to try. Susie's
you might want to read about it. I think La Leche and a lot of other groups, breastfeeding groups that have got it. What's the other one? Kelly Mom. She will always have things like that as well. So Kelly Mom, MOM, is an American website, but they talk about things like that as well.
I'm giggling at Susie because Susie's come back and she says, my baby's 3 months is getting bigger than me almost.
Oh, I know that. It's so lovely.
I'm just having a giggle at the thought of that. I think I remember it so clearly when you're feeding and you see it with mums, and you're feeding this tiny baby, and the breast is bigger than the baby, and then by the end of it, the breast is tiny and the baby is huge. It's so funny. Anyway, so Susie's baby is almost bigger than her now, and getting quite heavy. How would you recommend holding him whilst breastfeeding? That goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, with letting the weight sit on your lap. Take the weight on your lap, because they get bigger, and there's much.
Footstool.
Yeah, proper. And actually, it doesn't. If you're out,
you even need a footstool.
Out and about. Put a foot on. Not that we're allowed to go out and about that much, but we are more now. If you've got your pram, put the brake on. Put your foot on the wheel of the pram, and that will lift your leg up, so that actually as Naomi demonstrated a minute ago, your leg is the support to your wrist to hold your baby.
You're sitting on your knee.
Yeah, and the support for their back is your wrist on your knee, so that actually you're not having to hold the whole weight of this really big baby. So let's have a go with that, Susie, and see. If we had some of our pictures, we could have shown you some other pictures of that. Maybe we'll try and do that for next week. We could talk about big baby feeding, couldn't we?
Yeah, big boy feeding is good. Yeah. Or big girl feeding.
Claire's come back saying, thanks for the advice. I've been block feeding since 8 weeks, but perhaps the blocks aren't long enough, 4 hourly or so currently. Yeah, you can go a bit longer than that. I suspect his attachment isn't brilliant now that we're doing grown-up feeding and it's all new. I'll be in touch again. Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you, Claire. Susie's come back and said thank you, and somebody's been tagged in this. Claire's come on. So Claire threw in Lysette from MVP. I had a large lad, he was quite big, and at just under 9 weeks, so growing well and feeding weight. 9 weeks already, gosh. He's getting lazy. He slips down the boob mid-feed, which obviously can be a little painful. Any tips, please, for keeping him properly attached? Thanks, Claire and Little Fits. Well, not so little, Claire, not so little. So, I think
angle of the dangle again, maybe.
Yeah, make sure you've got him on well. Make sure your wrist is well supported, and I think that's part of the issue is that they get so heavy that actually we can't hold them. They're so heavy. Maybe let gravity help. Take yourself
I think also,
back.
by that stage your breasts are a little bit softer and not quite so full. So it might be the shape of your breast has changed slightly. So it's worth revisiting.
Yeah,
what's
definitely.
happening. Get somebody to video you again and see what you're doing. And look at where your breast's lying, because it could be that they're just slightly softer than they were. So the nipple might be a bit lower than it was, and it just might be that you can roll. I haven't got any muslins here.
Yeah, just roll one up.
Fold a muslin up sort of in half and then in half again longwise, and then just roll it all up and put it under your breast. Yes, it's just like a little pillow underneath your breast, and that sometimes just lifts it back up to where it was when you started with a fuller breast, and that might support you. It's quite a good tip actually, so try that and see if it makes a difference.
We use that quite a lot because it's really useful from the point of view of firming up breast tissue as well. Yeah. So if you've got a softer breast and it's more difficult for the baby to attach to a soft breast, rolling up the muslin, popping it underneath will really help, and it will help lift a breast. So we do use it quite a bit actually. But congrats Claire, he's 9 weeks, can't believe it. I remember meeting him when he was newborn, so that's incredible. Yeah, lovely to hear it's still good. You're still doing so well. Right, Victoria has said her baby's being switched to formula for medical reasons. When taking a bottle, she sometimes chokes and splutters. We're holding the bottle at a 45-degree angle and making sure the teat is full. Is there anything we can do to stop this? She used to do it at my breast and it turned out to be an overactive letdown. So we would be talking about using, this is one of our top fans, that's nice to know. We would be talking about doing responsive bottle feeding, so we'd be talking about having that bottle really quite low. So Naomi's got a bottle, and we'll pass it on and get her to demonstrate. And then the babies, when we do responsive bottle feeding, I'll move it forward, the baby's in charge of the flow.
So put the bottle at sort of a level so that it's not tipped up. 45 degrees might be slightly too fast for your baby, so turn it onto its side and just make sure there's enough milk in the end of the teat. You don't need to fill the whole teat up, because if you get a bottle and fill it with water, it will just tip all the time, drip 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 drip. But if you put it on its side so that it's just flat, it won't trickle out all the time. And then just make sure there's enough in the end. Sit your baby up but close as if you were breastfeeding, and then rub the nipple down his top lip and let him take in the bottle himself, in the teat into his mouth himself, and then he will suckle and pause, and he'll pace the feed like he was as if he was breastfeeding. It might be that your baby's got a slightly higher palate than other babies, and that's a variation of normal, and sometimes you need to direct the nipple, the teat, higher up into the roof of his mouth, and that might stop milk pooling in his mouth quite as much than if he's sort of not got a very good vacuum in his mouth. So if you sort of look in your baby's mouth, is there a bit of a higher gap between his gums, so that it's much sort of more like an arch rather than a rainbow? It's perfectly normal that that's what your baby's born with, and it might be that as parents you've got that, but it might be that you need to direct the teat higher up into his palate, and that will allow him to create a better vacuum to remove the milk more effectively, and that means that he can then use his tongue more efficiently, and he may well stop spluttering and choking. But make sure that the bottle's at a nice angle and he's pacing it. Obviously as the feed finishes you need to turn it up a little bit, but when it's full, he's obviously at the beginning of the feed very hungry, so he's going to be suckling much more firmly and strongly and aggressively to get the food. You need to make sure that it's not up too high, because it will flow very fast. But have a look inside his mouth, and just, you know, if he sucks your finger, does it go high into the roof of his mouth? Because it might be that you need to just put the teat up there a little bit more. And the other thing is you can experiment with some different types of teats as well, because some, you know, one size doesn't fit all, and it might be that you need to be a bit more experimental with your teats that you're using. But we talked then about the responsive feeding, and he will pace the feed, suckle and pause, and he will take what he needs rather than what you want him to have, and it may be that it's not quite as quick, and he can then cope with the flow. But have a look at all of those things and see if that makes a difference for you.
Wow, we've got stacking up questions. We're going to have to keep moving. So good luck with that, Victoria. I hope that makes feeding a bit easier. So a message has come back replying to... so Claire Bunden's come back saying thanks to Aya, and so she says, yes, we got down from 20 feeds to 12, but still engorged. Oh, you poor love. Letdowns are like hot needles. Hope things will improve over time. It's interesting, isn't it? We've said how many people don't actually feel their letdowns, and other people feel them really, really acutely. So it's amazing. So Claire, keep going, and hopefully things will improve. Katie's come on saying, thank you for your help with encouraging baby to stay awake. I'll try the compressions. One other question. I have, how often would you say to pump in a day if you're feeding on demand with your baby? I was told to stop pumping often. So now only once in the middle of the night and sometimes in the day, and getting around 200 mils, both breasts. I feel like I should pump more to enhance milk supply for the baby. Any help would be appreciated. Well, you only need to pump if you need that extra milk, Katie.
You don't need it, don't do it.
Yeah, you don't need to do it. And obviously if you are stockpiling in milk bank would be absolutely delighted to have it. But if you're now producing enough milk for your baby, then you don't need to carry on. We never anticipate that women have to carry on pumping. It's always a short-term thing. So if you're producing enough, but you'd like enough for a feed in the day, or have a bit in your fridge or your freezer, then go for it. But
when
you
your breasts
don't
are full, so that might be first thing in the morning.
Yeah, that's when most people find they can pump the most. And there are many people out there who like their partner to be able to give a feed. So if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. But there is no need for you to feed once your milk supply. No need for you to express once your milk supply is established. So don't feel the need. Wow, we've got 18 comments. We better get moving. We'll run out of time.
1 minute.
Claire's come back and thanked us. So if they're all like this, we won't have any problems. And Victoria has said thank you as well. So have I missed it? Oh. Well, maybe I was counting. It was counting questions we've already had. So maybe we haven't got loads of questions. So that seems to be the bottom of the pile. If I've missed your question, message me and I'll have a look and see if I can see it. But I think we've done everybody. So we've done Imi and Jazz. Rachel, Claire, just checking. Saloni, we've chatted about, and Aya. I think we've got you all. Oh, we've got a new comment's just popped up now though. And that was Katie thanking for the help and advice. So I think we've done them all. So hopefully we've not missed anyone. If we've missed anyone, just message now. I've got a thumbs up. I think that meant that everyone thinks I've caught everybody. So, got anything else to put in? We've got 8 minutes left.
Well, I think we could mention tongue tie, because we haven't talked about tongue tie very much, but it's sort of like the red herring and the elephant in the room at every opportunity in breastfeeding. And I think it is our bread and butter. When services were normal before COVID, it was our bread and butter. Our clinics were full of babies with tongue ties, and it is a variation of normal, and nearly every baby has got one. And I think that what you have to remember with it is that even if your baby has got a very obvious tongue tie, it may not be a problem, but what you do have to do is make sure that you get really, really, really good breastfeeding support with positioning and attachment. That is the most important thing with every single baby, whether they've got an obvious tie or a non-obvious tie. You have no idea about it, or and I think a lot of healthcare professionals also, if they can't give you another answer, they think, well, baby's got a tongue tie, and then as soon as you hear that, you think that your baby can't do anything because it's got a tongue tie. But actually, if we saw 100 people a month, which we probably did in our clinics, only 10 of those would probably need to be snipped, and the other 90 we would just work with positioning and attachment, which your own healthcare professionals can do. So I think the first thing is to make sure that they look at the basics and don't look at the most complicated thing first. If you went to the doctor with a sore finger and he said, oh, well, I think your finger needs amputating, every time you saw them for a sore finger and actually you've just got a little splinter in it, it's missing the most obvious things. And the most obvious thing with the tongue tie is that your positioning and attachment is absolutely brilliant. Because if it's not, if you have it cut, and it might not need cutting, it's going to be the same afterwards.
Yeah, it's not going to make any improvement. It's
not going to make an improvement. If your positioning and attachment's poor, you're still going to have sore nipples afterwards. And also, we talked a little bit about higher palate with the responsive feeding with the bottle a moment ago. And quite often babies have got higher palates, and that's what they're born with, just the same as bigger nose, little nose, ears in different places, whatever. And you know, so that's normal for them, and the anatomy of you as parents may be the same. And so you've got to work with what the baby's born with. That is not going to change if you have a tongue tie cut. You're still going to have that high palate, and you've still got to get your positioning to work with that high palate. And that means getting the nipple right up into the top of the roof of the mouth. It's getting a really big mouthful of breast, and it's getting your baby close to you in the right position and get your baby in the right plane for your body. And there are some babies that absolutely need tongue ties cutting, there is no doubt about it, but there are many, many, many that don't, and it's not always the first treatment that we would look at. We would look at, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks, we would look at positioning and attachment when we were seeing mothers in clinics, and we would work with that, and mostly they would resolve without going any further. So, you know, don't be put off by somebody saying, oh, your baby's probably got a tongue tie, I can't help you. If you can't get help from them, go and find somebody else that can help you with positioning and attachment, so that you really get proper positioning and attachment support. So that's, you know, Oxfordshire breastfeeding support, baby cafes, La Leche, your midwives, your health visitors, they are all trained to support with breastfeeding.
Well, I think we're going off to tea again.
So,
no, thank you.
Any hot drink?
No, thank you. We forgot to put the sign on the door again.
So, you know, make sure that you get really, really, really good positioning and attachment support, because that is probably all that you're going to need to make it better for the majority of babies. As I said, occasionally you do need to have them snipped, and it does make a massive difference to some of those babies that aren't gaining weight. They suddenly start gaining weight, and feeding becomes more comfortable, but it's not the norm. It's probably more unusual to have that than it is to have babies that need good positioning and attachment support. So it's kind of an elephant in the room which is not dealt with properly a lot of the time, but actually it's mostly just tweaking your baby and getting the angle of the dangle right in their mouth. And often if your baby is tummy to mummy and your breasts are not in that plane, the breast will fall out of the mouth and out of the baby's mouth, and then somebody will say, oh, your baby's got a tongue tie because it can't hold onto the breast. Actually, it's just by moving your baby's angle a little bit differently and putting a bit of support under your breast with a muslin, you might find that actually feeding becomes really simple. And we do see mothers in clinics, and it takes a couple of minutes to just resolve that quite often. So it's very simple, basic breastfeeding skills, and they are often overlooked because someone can see something in your baby's mouth that thinks that it's tongue tie. I've seen babies with really, really, you know, 100% stuck chin, stuck down babies that are 10 months old and they've gained £1 a week, you know, and somebody said to them at 9 months, oh, your baby's got a tongue tie, and they've been worried sick, but actually their baby's enormous and feeding beautifully, and she's never had sore nipples. So don't let people just look in your baby's mouth. You need to have the basic breastfeeding. The person that's looking after you is your first line of care, should be the one that does the basic breastfeeding with you, and that's the one that is more important than seeing a specialist that can do an oral assessment, because if that's not in place, then, you know, everything else is not going to work, and then you do think that it's tongue tie, and then it becomes a really big problem, especially in this climate where you can't get access to people assessing your baby easily. So, you know, really work on your positioning and attachment, and look at all the videos we've done in that attachment to see if that helps.
I think another cup of tea.
So I hope that's been useful for you, and I know that some people will come back and say that their babies couldn't have fed without one, and absolutely there is always an exception to all of these things.
And Erica's actually come up and said, she said, hi ladies, we had a tongue tie surgery yesterday, and I'm putting little one on the breast a lot, so I hope we're going to see an improvement. He's 10 weeks, very curious and dancing on the breast. So actually what we do know is that often the 48 hours post the frenulotomy, that's what it's called, just when they cut the frenulum, the 48 hours post that, the babies can be quite upset, quite sort of unsettled, and you might find that it's a very difficult time. You'll feel like you've taken a backward step, and actually then is hopefully what you'll see is an improvement. I can think of one case in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, where I've had a mother who said to me it was instantly better and it stayed better. Most women will say, well, we had a really good feed post the frenulotomy, and then it went bit pear-shaped for a while and then a gradual improvement. And we often say to parents, you need a good 2 weeks before you can really see if that's really making
weeks, really.
making a
certainly
difference.
A 10-week-old baby, Erica, you may see it in a month, not in 2 weeks.
It will take time, and it, when we talk about, and Naomi's saying about we're not looking for them specifically because we're working on tongue function. It's not what we can see. If someone can see a tongue tie, that doesn't mean your baby can't feed, and this is what Naomi's saying. It's not the visual, it's what the function of that tongue is. And if we do an oral assessment, we're not just looking, we are going through a whole process of
including watching feeding.
Yeah. What can this baby do? Can this baby feed from breast, from bottle, or whatever? So anyway, so it's much, much more than what you can see when it comes to a tongue tie.
And good feeding is good physio.
Yeah.
So if your baby is attached to the breast well, it will maximise its tongue function, and then that might be all you need to do. If it's never been able to do that, the tongue will never work to its full capacity. So you've really got to work, and this is why we don't see babies on day 0 and do an oral assessment, because they've never used their tongue that they're born with. And you've got to just practice with it and make sure that tongue really has reached its maximum potential before you start to make a change to it. And often it is just tweaking, positioning, allows that tongue function to improve without doing anything else. It's very complex, and it's never black and white, and it's never a magic wand.
No.
I don't think there's many come to clinic and don't have problems afterwards and before. We have many mums and babies coming in for weeks and weeks with ongoing support when they've had their baby's tongues cut. So don't ever think that it's a magic wand and it's the thing that you do first. You've really got to work with everything to get it right.
Right.
Well, there.
It's 3:30. So thank you very much.
Come to a natural end. So
I think we
hope
have.
you found some of the things helpful.
Erica's come back. Thank you, loves. Thank you, Erica.
Hope it all goes well, Erica. Keep going. Get that physio working on the tongue.
Well, I'll be here next week. I'm not sure who's going to be with me because Naomi's officially on holiday. In fact, she's been an angel and come in today and done it with me today as it is. So I might be on my own.
I might
next
even
week.
come back next week.
Oh.
Unless I've gone to the Caribbean.
That's a dedication. Whoa. Is that
I don't think I'm allowed
quarantined?
to, am
I
I?
was about to say. We want you back.
If it's raining, I might.
No. Thank you to one and all. Thank you for all your lovely questions.
Yeah.
Keep coming back to us. Remember that we are here. We are available. You can ring us. You can email us. All our contact details are on the OUH website, so do get in touch. And it's lovely to hear so many successes. Claire, congrats on Fitz, and lovely hearing about all your other babies that are doing so well. And I hope things improve for those that are struggling at the moment. So we'll see you next week. Bye bye.